Shalom, who praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Harakah Kodash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and Shalom to the whole full elect. This is Payal of the GMS London camp, and this is News and Prophecy, Prophecy and News. I have an article here from Zero Edge. The title reads, In order to have a tolerant society, the elite believe they must be intolerant of all dissenting views. Alright? And basically this is as you know, we're exalted by Yahweh Shai, our Lord Yahweh Shai, to basically, watch as well as pray. And how do you watch? I always say this, we're instructed in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 9th chapter, to measure the time diligently. And the measuring stick is the words, right? Prophecy, all right? Yahweh Shai outlined that when the disciples came unto him, as all known at the time, to say what would be the, when we know when the time is, all right? In saying all of that, this is a biblical prophecy coming to pass, which is ultimately going to be the closing of the gates of mercy, all right? Whereby the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai will be removed from the internet, all right? Which is the unicorn that help push the word, all right? And saying all of that, read this title again. It says, in order to have a tolerant society, the elite believe they must be intolerant of all dissenting views. And as we delve into this, you're going to see some points. And I just wanted to show this very quickly. This is some notifications I got just now. So it says, terror threat level in the UK lowered as momentum of attacks in Europe reduces significantly, Home Secretary says. And that's down to the vid, basically. UK's youngest convicted terrorist who led neo-Nazi cell from grandmother's house avoids custody. So it shows you that there's, I believe I heard Elder Yeshawamba talk about terrorist attacks being next on the agenda. And that's something that I'm sure I've said for a minute as well. Right, if not, so lucky I've been heavily meditating on it. That's something that's gonna come out the bag, but I'm pretty sure that I've mentioned it a few times because I think that's the next, stage that we're in with all this pandemic business. All right, remember, as it said, we're in a time as it is prophesied to be a time like never been on the earth. All right, and it won't be a time after it. This is the pinnacle, the summit of wickedness that we're heading into. That we're, the time of Jacob's trouble is upon us, right out of temptation, and there's going to be manifold temptations as we move towards this time to prove our faith. All right. So it says, in order to have a tolerant society, all right, the elite believe they must be intolerant of all dissenting views. So it says, when information becomes a threat, even thinking the wrong thing can be dangerous. So they're saying that if you think the wrong thing, it can be dangerous, but to who? Over the past several weeks, I have heard the word misinformation uttered in the same sentence as terror or terrorist countless times. All right, because now they're making it as to where if you present, quote unquote anti-maxers, what's the other one? Conspiracy theories. Now you're deemed you're spoken in the same breath and light as a terrorist. All right, and that's moving towards an Orwellian society by design. In the old days, the extremists and the terrorists were on the other side of the globe, but now we are being told that they live among us. Yeah, and as you can see, that article I mentioned, all right, where it says about the UK youngest convicted terrorist who led neo-Nazi cell, all right, leftist of far right group, all right, from grandmother's house avoids custody. So basically, he led that from inside his grandmother's house. So that's in the UK, all right? So now they're showing you that the terrorists are among us, all right? So it says, so how can we identify them? Well, we are being told the bad guys can be identified by what they believe. Those that do embrace the propaganda that big tech and corporate media are relentlessly pushing are being systematically sorry, they that do not embrace the propaganda that big tech and corporate media are relentlessly pushing are being systematically deplatformed, cancelled, and pushed to the fringes of society. And that's what you're seeing happening right now. An example is like X22 report. They, the dude Dave that does that, he's been totally Alex Jones, as you know already, but X22 come to mind. He's been totally pushed off YouTube. Right, you got to go to his website now if you want to hear any of his information. And he's given the spiel, all right, on everything that's going on. So and that's the proof of that, all right, cancelled and pushed to the fringes of society. So that's the whole cancel culture that's been prevalent for the past few years. It's been built up by design, all right, for people to get cancelled and for no one to bat an eyelid when they get cancelled. All right, look at Wiley over here in the UK, for example. Said one thing, he's been ousted off every social media platform and everything, all right? They threw him under the bus. But apparently that is not nearly enough, because the New York Times is now asking for the Biden administration to appoint a reality czar, all right, that will be given authority to deal with misinformation and extremism. All right, a czar is basically a Russian way of saying Caesar, all right? So they want someone to rule over the reality, all right, and basically present what is reality. And this is something that's been on our cards for a while, because with the media that was pushed to the forefront of the people through the television, all right, they could basically control the narrative. But now, with the onset of the internet and free information being put out there, it's basically, peel back the foreskin on Esau's rulership, right? Lift up his skirts. It's made him naked. So he's got to cover that, all right, so he can push for his agenda. So exactly what will be done to those that are guilty of committing thought crimes, which goes back to a Minority Report against the government. Sadly, I think that we are eventually going to find out, all right? And that's what we're heading towards, all right? Heavy penalties are going to be put on people, as it tells you in the book of Revelations 2 and 10, being cast into jail, all right, in prison, all right. That's what we're the onset of. For decades, the elite have been telling us that we need to have a tolerant society, but now that they have almost total control, we are being told that in order to have that tolerant society, we must be extremely intolerant of dissenting viewpoints, all right. They seem to have embraced a very radical form of paradox tolerancy. And as a result, our society is becoming more dystopian with each passing day. And that's what you're seeing happening. From when this pandemic came into play, the rights of the people is being, taken away inch by inch. All right. I remember when dealing with the UK, when it started, it's like 5 p.m. every day was what you waiting to see what Boris was going to come on the TV and say, right, and address the masses of the people. And now people being conditioned into this whole lockdown, all right? Reading on, it says, for example, the U.S. Representative Jackie Speer suggested that it is time to start referring to Republicans as a terrorist right, all right? And they're establishing that line, and the reason why they really want to do that, I'm guessing, is because of all the outspokenness that Trump presented during the course of his tenure, all right? Well, his run as president. That is close to half the country. Does she really want nearly half the nation to be considered terrorists? I mean, if that's what it takes, that's what they'll do, all right? If you're speaking out against their views. Last month, I wrote about a new bill, because remember, they're deeming a lot of them terrorists, right? With the storming the Capitol building, that's justification enough for them to set up as to where, they can be deemed terrorists. Right? Last month, I wrote about a new bill that was being introduced in Congress, which is essentially the Patriot Act on steroids. But of course, the Patriot Act was primarily focused on terror threats from overseas, while even Democrats are admitting that this new bill appears to be specifically targeting Americans that do not have the correct political views. If you doubt this, just consider that what Tulsi Gabbard is saying about this new bill, right? This is an issue that all Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians should be extremely concerned about, especially because we don't have to guess about where this goes or how it ends. What characteristics are we looking for as we are building this profile of a potential extremist, right? Because they're building a total new profile for an extremist, all right, by standing on certain political views, all right, and certain thoughts as towards how the government is dealing with the whole pandemic, etc., etc. So it says, what are we talking about? Religious extremists? Are we talking about Christians, evangelical Christians? What is a religious extremist? Is it somebody who's pro-life, right? And the lines are basically getting blurred, all right, ultimately. To, as the title reads, basically, if you don't agree with them, they're going to have to do away with you, all right? In the end, they don't have to put millions of people in prison to chill free speech in America. All they have to do is set a few examples, and most others will willingly fall in line. And that's the same thing. That's how it always works, right? So it says it is all about new behavior. It is all about behavioral conditioning. They want to shape what we do, what we say, and what we think by creating fear. And really, this is like the capstone being put on the pyramid, basically, because the minds of the people have been conditioned for the past decade or so, all right? Over the few past years, you've seen examples with people getting cancelled due to cancel culture. And basically, in that happening, you can see now, Ladybird. You can see now that with all this happening, that now through the guise of the vid that they're establishing that. So it says, as Grace Kelly has aptly pointed out, this is something that they're doing to our children as well, all right? Because they know that I can't remember the philosopher, give me a child in his first 7 years and I'll tell you what kind of man he'll be. So they're conditioned, and that's really why most Gen Z, all right, put like the latter of millennials as well, they basically, conform to this new society. Their views is based on this new society. Whereas people that know it a certain way prior, all right, they're having difficulty being molded to this. But they're basically setting the precedent with the new generations coming to be conformed to the new normal, all right? So you can check out that video. So it says fear is a mind killer. And fear is a beautiful thing because it sets everything right. But this is just by Esau, all right? He's manipulating the people for his own will. The elite understand that this is the best way to control large masses of people, and that is why they are continually looking for new ways to keep us in a constant state of fear, all right? That's why they keep on bringing out the information. Like recently, they said the new, the vid variant that's out now, basically the vaccine they got out ain't as effective, so they got to come and bring out a new one, all right? So it says ultimately they want are vast herds of sheeple that are extremely easy to manipulate, and that's true, all right? If you would like to see what this looks like, spend some time studying the Chinese system. And this is crazy. In China, the government is so utterly dominant over the population that hardly anyone objects to mandatory anal swabs when mandatory anal swabs are implemented. So they implemented something in China where people got to be swabbed in their arse, basically, mandatory, all right? The same thing ultimately is going on over here, but it's not as extreme as in China, all right? They're doing it in a polite manner, true to Esau's nature, all right? And also with the British culture is super PC, politically correct and conservative, that they just have to present it to you as an offer you can't refuse. And what I mean is that if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're not going to have access to A, B, and C, all right? Unfortunately, unfortunately, the US is moving in the same direction very rapidly. Decades ago, Americans would get very upset when the government would decide to start dangerous new military conflicts. All right, but now Joe Biden can roll US military forces into Syria without hardly anyone even noticing. All right, because Biden, which really no one's, people are less aware, all right, that Trump did a lot of good for America. He brought back the economy, trade deals, kept out Issachar, if you want to, the Mexicans or whatever. In terms of when we're looking at America in terms of economy, he did things that was very beneficial to the Americans, all right. Even though, but the bad thing about it was that, or what people deem the bad thing is his outspokenness and the way he talked and the manner and all that kind of stuff. He's a hard nosed businessman. He knew what he was doing. He was doing what he was doing to get the power. But that's the point. Whereas Biden came under the guise that he would be moving out a tyrant such as Trump. But no one knows that Biden's track record isn't a good. That's a politician to the letter. All right. His whole thing is about promising everything and giving you nothing. All right. Treating the people like shit, basically, like mushrooms. Feed them shit and keep them in the dark. All right. But in saying all of that, he came into presidency and he signed 37 executive orders in the first week, more than any presidents before him have ever done in their whole career, all right, or their tenure and their whole standing as president, which shows you, and war being one of them, all right, whereas Trump stood to bring out all the soldiers out of war, all right, and this shows you that the mass of the people basically, they got a number done on them, all right, they got their emotions played with, because they didn't really look into the information. They just looked at how they felt about everything, and they didn't look at what was actually happening on pen, the facts and figures on paper, basically. But nonetheless, this is the forwarding of the agenda of the beast system being implemented, moving towards the mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip. All right. So it says, and it appears that the Biden administration is also setting the stage for potential war with Iran. Yeah, prophecy of World War III. So again, saying it, this man Biden is going to be a bigger devil than everyone even really recognize, right? And because morality in this society is at an all-time low, people would look at someone like Biden, and I forgot the law he put in place, but dealing with Jake, the tribes, where he basically put them in prison and caused a lot of bloodshed in the so-called black community. They didn't look at that from a moral standpoint, that this guy would be fit for the task, as well as Kamala Harris. Just because she's a so-called black woman don't mean that she's all good either, right? She's a demon and the devil as well, right? She don't have no good intentions for no one. She's got a spotted track record as well, all right? So all of this liberal leaders that's been put in place with, Democratic Party, they got nothing good on the cards. And as you can see, potential World War III says that Iran could be weeks away from having sufficient material to develop a nuclear weapon if it continues to violate the 2015 nuclear deal. All right, and that's going to be an established, and the reason why they want to do that is because they want to secure their interests in the state of Israel. All right. And really, as you know, biblical prophecy in the book of Jeremiah tells you the least of the flock shall draw them out, all right, which is the state of Israel, all right? And that's basically going to be the main catalyst, just as like the murder of, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand was in World War One, all right? The same way that Israel, the state of Israel in the Middle East is going to be the catalyst for World War III. So it says Iran could be weeks away from having sufficient material to develop a nuclear weapon. And it sounds familiar, or does it sound familiar? WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, which they came to find out never existed, and they knew they never existed. They just needed it as a guise to go into the land of Iraq or Afghanistan, whichever one escapes me right now. But it says U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken warned Monday in an interview with NBC News. Meanwhile, the Democrats are getting ready to raise our taxes. All right, they're gonna make you pay more taxes, and many Americans are actually begging them to do it. So it says the Democrats also want to end the Second Amendment, but of course, millions of people are quite eager for that to happen as well. Yeah, all right, and don't be surprised if there's even, and that's what we're seeing. I mentioned it already, that there's potentially gonna be um, terrorist attacks, which really are false flags, in order for them to, as a means, a grounds to establish the taking away of the Second Amendment. All right, and when they take away the Second Amendment from the people, what's then gonna happen? All right, they're gonna be able to fully force a police state over the Americans. All right, because their main, that's why they had the Capitol building debacle. All right, because with that basically, and all the different rallies that's been happening in terms of calling to arms and having the right for the Second Amendment, they want to use that as grounds to take the arms away from the people. Because the whole reason why that Second Amendment set in place, from what they say, is that in case there's a tyranny put in place in America, the people have the right to take them out of power. So obviously they're disarming the main competition, right? So it says after everything that they have already gotten away with in a few past months, they probably figure that they may as well go nuts because nobody is going to stop them, all right? And they really are going balls to the wall, all right? So it says this isn't about one political party implementing an agenda now that they are in power. Rather, this is about one group of people wanting to permanently neuter and silence the opposition, all right? And that's what because Trump and Biden, that really set the stage for like an all-out war. They need to come down with a hammer, basically. So it says, from now on, those that dare to question the official narratives handed down by our overlords will be branded terrorists, and this new war on terror will be designed to absolutely crush dissent wherever it is found. I really like the investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald recently made this point. Right? So he said the last 2 weeks have ushered in a wave of new domestic police powers and rhetoric in the name of fighting terrorism, right, quote unquote, that are carbon copies of many of the worst excesses of the first war on terror that began nearly 20 years ago. This new war on terror, one that is domestic in name from the start. And it's the same thing that's going on in the UK. A lot of people, it went under the radar for them. Going back with the past decade or so, I really think the past 5 years, really, they've been charging a lot of criminals that would have been charged with ABH, GBH, intent to sell, illegal products or whatever. They've been charging them with terrorist charges. Basically, they're deeming those criminals that would have been deemed mobsters, mob affiliates, mobsters, low-level street gang members. They've been slapping, throwing a book at them and calling them terrorists, all right? So this is what's happening. And then even with Scotland, if you want to take it away from terrorists, even now I'm saying, if you want to take it away from, the underworld, all right, the underbelly of society, and to deal with regular everyday people through the guise of the vid. I did a video on it previously. You had the family up in Scotland, Edinburgh, all right, or Glasgow, somewhere in Scotland, where they basically got, they dealt with it lightheartedly when the police came to their door because they were asking them about, apparently they weren't working within the parameters of the social distancing and not having a certain amount of people in the house. Police came down and basically have charged him. I believe one of the charges was a terrorist charge or something close to that. All right. So now they're making it as to where these social distancing laws and all these different kind of things are slowly but surely, gradually being trumped up to be some crazy charges. Because as well, the other thing they're saying is a lot of people are not taking the pandemic seriously. So they have to come down with a heavier force. All right. So it says this new war on terror, one that is domestic in name, all right, from the start, and carries the explicit purpose of fighting extremists and domestic terrorists among American citizens on U.S. soil, presents the whole slew of historical familiar dangers. When governments exploiting media-generated fear and dangers arm themselves with power to control information, debate, opinion, activism, and protest, right? And that's basically what they're doing right now on a sweeping scale. So it says, for a time in January 1984 by George Orwell became the number one selling book on Amazon. And it did. Last month, it became a top seller because a lot of people, I guess there must have been some kind of platform that put out the information about the Orwellian society. And a lot of people refer to George Orwell's 1984, which was written in 1948. But they got a movie that I believe actually came out in 1984. It's a good movie as well. And you might say it's, in terms of what's going on right now, you might say it's like a hyper escalation of things that we have right now, but not unless everything stands. Because it's basically heavy censorship on what's being said, and everything that's being fed to you is dictated by the powers that be, all right? So they don't want you to think, they want you to, they don't want you to, they basically want you to think in line with what they present before you. So I'll read that again. So, for a time in January 1984 by George Orwell became the number one selling book on Amazon. And right now society is moving in a direction at a pace that is absolutely breathtaking. Right, but a lot of people are not in the know of these different things because as far as they're concerned, this is like hocus pocus, conspiracy theories, things that are not real, but is a very real thing, all right? Obviously, with most of these things, there's always a shill in the midst that's gonna dilute the information. So you look at it and you could take it on first glance as, that's just, it don't make no sense. But when you really peel back the layers and look into it properly, then you can see everything being presented before you. And the question that always has to be asked is cui bono? Who benefits, all right? And a lot of people stand to benefit from these things being put in place, all right? They really do want complete and total control, and they don't, and they are going, and they aren't going to stop until they get it. Needless to say, if we continue on this path as a nation, we are quite doomed. All right. The good news is that the Democrats, such as Tulsi Gabbard, are publicly pushing back against those assaults on our liberties and freedoms. Yeah, there's always going to be one, but who I've never heard of this Tulsi Gabbard. All right. She ain't got no power or pull as far as I'm concerned. All right. That's my opinion. But as well, if we want to deal with it in prophetic terms, the prophecies have to come to pass. So all these things are going to be implemented. So it says the bad news is that she definitely, see, even says the bad news. The bad news is that she is definitely in the minority, see? And there seems to be a consensus building in both parties that extremism in the United States must be crushed, right? This is a very dark time in our history, and it appears that things will never be quite the same ever again. Yeah, that's why they called it a new normal. And also what I just remembered is you had Biden talk about it's going to be a dark winter, all right? But mind you, he's basically, all them 37 executive orders that he's put in place basically work more in favor to mess up the United States economy, Babylon the Great, all right? So all this is being implemented, all right? The heavy censorship to build up the image of the beast, which is the foundation which the RFID chip, which is the mark of the beast, can basically thrive upon. So let me delve into the scripture and I'll close it out. So this is Revelation 13, and I'll start from verse 14, and I'm going to read verse 14 and 15. So it says, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles. All right, it's talking about the beast, the dragon, all right, which is Esau, Edom, all right, as he's known today, the so-called white man, starting with the elites more than anything, all right? The people, the so-called white people at the bottom, more or less are just basically joining along for the ride, but the elite bankers, basically they're there, and everyone that's a lesser luminaries, even your favorite rapper Jay-Z, all right, your favorite singer Beyonce. They're all in cahoots with this beast system to establish it and to partake in it. All right. So it says, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which she had power to do in the sight of the beast. All right. And those miracles start with the ICBM being dropped on Yugoslavia by NATO. All right. That's one of the miracles, but also the miracles that have been presented are is technology. All right. The technology that's got today. As you can see, you got Elon Musk with the Neuralink. He's looking to heal a disabled man that ain't walked in 20 years and disabled from the neck down, and basically going to give him the ability to walk again. These are all these miracles that are being produced in these last days, even with the vaccine, all right, and all these different things. They're part of that miracle, all right, magic, if you would say, of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. All right, the wound was when they were taken out of their power, going back to the Roman Empire. All right, but now they're back in power. This is the second leg of the Roman Empire. All right, and basically in saying all of that, they said they wanted to make an image. All right, and the image of the beast is a lifestyle. All right, that's why you had the LGBTQ plus society is basically making waves, because that's the onset of the beast, is the image of the beast. All right, women's rights, all these new things that have been set in place are part of the beast system. Right, that's that image whereby everyone's conforming to and joining in. All right, and this is another part, as I was mentioning, the dissenting views against everything is part of you not partaking in the image. All right, verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Yeah, he had power, all right, because this man has the power, starting with the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, DuPonts, Gettys, the Beers, all these prestige, quote unquote, prestige banking families. All right, they are the ones that have the power seat and the control. All right. And it says they had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many should not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And this is basically this article, this information of where we're heading is where it's going, man. They're gonna if you speak out against this society, and it, starting with us, we're the main threat, the Israelites. But then also it falls to anyone that speaks against. You could be far right, far left. You can be conservative in your views. You could anything. If you're not in line with this, then what stands to happen is they're gonna take your head off, man. Right? So with that, man, I pray you're edified. To the next one, say shalom.